He, a widowed and powerful tycoon, needs a nanny for his sensitive daughter. She, a humble and shy yet kind young woman, agrees to the trial. Observing her with his daughter, her sweetness and patience draw a genuine smile from the little girl. In that moment, seeing the light that Julia radiates, Daniel falls in love at first sight with her soul, with the goodness in her eyes and the hope she represents. Prepare for a twist where love at first sight challenges status and prejudice, but the kindness and strength of this love can break down all barriers. Watch this story to the end. You will be surprised by this story. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. Julia Carter adjusted her simple blouse for the 5th time before ringing the bell at the imposing gate. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the worn folder with her documents. At 24 years old, she had accumulated enough experience with children to know she had a special gift. But that mansion in Beverly Hills intimidated her in a way she had never experienced. Necessity had brought her there. Her mother, Connie, had been hospitalized for 2 weeks, and the hospital bills grew every day. Her education degree would have to wait another semester, maybe 2, if she didn't get a job that paid well enough to cover medical expenses and support her family. "Are you Julia Carter?" asked an elegant woman who appeared in the entrance hall after she passed through security. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Helena, the housekeeper. Mr. Sterling is waiting for you in the study." Julia followed through hallways, decorated with works of art that cost more than her family earned in years. Everything there radiated power and sophistication, a world completely different from the 2-bedroom apartment in the Bronx where she had grown up. On the other side of the mansion, Daniel Sterling was finishing another video conference with investors from Singapore. It was 7 in the morning in Los Angeles, but he had already been working for 3 hours. The tech empire he had built over the past 15 years didn't sustain itself, and since Isabella's death 2 years ago, work had become his only escape from the pain that consumed him. "Daddy?" Sophia's soft voice echoed through the half-open door of the study. Daniel immediately closed the laptop and turned to his daughter. At 6 years old, Sophia had her mother's dark eyes, but carried a melancholy that broke his heart every day. "Good morning, Princess. Are you awake?" Helena said a new lady is coming today. Sophia approached slowly, still in her pajamas. "Is she going to leave too?" Daniel knelt down to his daughter's height and held her delicate little hands. In the last 6 months, 12 different nannies had passed through the house. Sophia rejected them all with a coldness that worried him deeply. "We don't know yet, honey. How about we meet her first?" "Okay." Sophia shrugged, but Daniel noticed the careful hope in her eyes. He had read Julia's resume the night before. Teacher training, experience in community daycares, impeccable references from families in the outskirts. Nothing that suggested an ability to handle a traumatized child in a luxurious environment. But the specialized agencies had already exhausted their best candidates. "Mr. Sterling?" Helena knocked lightly on the door. "The candidate has arrived. You can bring her in." Julia entered the study, trying not to show the nervousness that dominated her. The man in front of her was even more imposing than the photos in the newspaper suggested. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair with some gray streaks that gave him an air of seductive maturity. But it was his eyes that impressed her the most. Blue like the sea, but carrying a deep sadness that she recognized immediately. "Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Sterling." Her voice was soft but firm. Daniel noticed that she maintained eye contact, something that many previous candidates couldn't do. There was something different about this young woman, a natural serenity that contrasted with her evident simplicity. "Have you read the job description?" "Yes, sir. Taking care of Sophia, assisting with school activities, attending to her daily needs." Julia paused. "I know she recently lost her mother. I imagine it's difficult for a child of this age." The sincerity in Julia's voice made Daniel lean slightly forward. The other candidates always focused on the technical part of the job, never mentioning Isabella or demonstrating understanding of Sophia's pain. "It's very difficult," he sighed. "Sophia has rejected all the nannies we've hired. She's a sensitive child and—" "Daddy?" Sophia appeared at the door, interrupting the conversation. Julia turned instinctively and smiled. It wasn't a forced or professional smile, but something genuine and warm that completely lit up her face. "Hi, Sophia, I'm Julia." Instead of condescendingly crouching down or extending her hand in an adult way, Julia simply remained where she was, allowing the girl to observe her at her own pace. Sophia studied the young woman for a long moment. There was something different about this girl. She didn't wear strong perfume like the others, didn't have red-painted nails, didn't speak with that artificial voice that adults used with children. "Are you going to take care of me?" asked Sophia directly. "If your dad allows it, and if you want me to, I would really like to be your friend." Daniel watched the interaction with redoubled attention. Julia hadn't promised care or fun. She had offered friendship. And Sophia, for the first time in months, didn't run back to her room. "Do you know how to play with dolls?" "I love dolls. I have 2 at home, Julia and Anna." "Your dolls have people's names?" "Of course. And what are your dolls called?" As the two talked, Daniel felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he had completely forgotten. Hope. At that moment, without any of the 3 being able to imagine, fate was about to intertwine their lives in a way that would change everything forever. "Can I show Julia my room?" asked Sophia, taking the young woman's hand with a naturalness that surprised Daniel. It was the first time in months that his daughter had shown genuine interest in a stranger. He nodded, watching the two leave the study holding hands. Through the security cameras, Daniel followed them through the hallways of the mansion. Julia admired every detail with amazed eyes, but without the greed that he had perceived in some previous candidates. She asked questions about the paintings, praised the colors of the walls, demonstrating an innocent curiosity that intrigued him. In Sophia's room, decorated in pastel tones with a castle-shaped bed, Julia sat on the floor without hesitation. Her simple clothes contrasted drastically with the luxury around her, but she seemed completely at ease. "This is my favorite doll," said Sophia, presenting a blonde porcelain doll. "Her name is Isabella, like my mommy." Daniel saw Julia pause, her eyes filling with understanding. She didn't offer empty condolences or uncomfortably change the subject. Instead, she delicately picked up the doll. "She's beautiful, Sophia. Your mom must have been very special." "She was the most beautiful woman in the world," replied Sophia, her voice filled with longing. "Daddy said she became a star in the sky." "That's lovely. I'm sure she's watching over you from up there." Daniel turned off the monitor, feeling a tightness in his chest. There was something in Julia's simplicity that disarmed him completely. She wasn't trying to impress or demonstrate pedagogical knowledge. She just talked to Sophia as if it were the most natural thing in the world. 2 hours later, Sophia's laughter echoed through the hallways for the first time since Isabella's funeral. Daniel left an important meeting halfway through to go to his daughter's room, where he found the two playing house with dolls scattered across the floor. "Daddy, Julia taught Isabella how to bake a pretend cake," announced Sophia, running to hug him. "That's great, Princess." Daniel smiled, but when his eyes met Julia's, he felt an electric current run through his body. She was watching him with an intensity that deeply disturbed him. "Mr. Sterling," Julia got up quickly, smoothing her skirt. "I hope you don't mind the mess." "Of course not." His voice came out huskier than he intended. "Sophia seems to be having fun." At that moment, Helena appeared at the door. "Sir, your mother is on the phone. She says it's urgent." Daniel sighed. Mrs. Sterling, the family matriarch, always had something urgent to discuss, usually related to her plans to find a new, suitable wife for her widowed son. "You can keep playing," he said, leaving the room. "Daniel, dear." His mother's imperious voice echoed through the phone. "I heard you're interviewing nannies again. Isn't it time you considered a boarding school for Sophia? The girl needs discipline and proper education." "Mum, we've already discussed this. Sophia stays with me." "Then at least hire someone qualified. Marcia Van Camp has a niece who graduated from a Swiss finishing school, specializing in children of high society." Adapted name to sound more American. "I'll consider it," lied Daniel, cutting the call short. He knew his mother was already orchestrating one of her famous charity dinners, where she invariably presented young single women suitable for him. Daughters of businessmen, granddaughters of politicians, women who saw in him only status and fortune. When he returned to Sophia's room, he found Julia helping his daughter organize the toys. "Daddy, can I have dinner with Julia tonight?" Daniel hesitated. The protocol was clear. Nannies ate their meals in the kitchen with the other staff, but the sparkle in Sophia's eyes made him agree. "Of course, Princess." During dinner in the family dining room, Daniel observed Julia discreetly. She used the correct silverware without ostentation, talked to Sophia about various subjects, demonstrating a natural intelligence that impressed him. When Sophia asked about her family, Julia spoke about her mother with so much love that Daniel felt a pang of envy. "Mom always says that a big heart doesn't fit in a small chest," Julia smiled, helping Sophia cut her meat. "That's why we need to share our love with everyone." "Your mother seems very wise," commented Daniel. "She's the strongest person I know." Julia's eyes filled with restrained tears. "She's sick right now, but she'll get better soon." Daniel noticed how she looked away, clearly worried. That night, after putting Sophia to sleep, Julia said goodbye politely. "Mr. Sterling, thank you very much for the opportunity. When can I hear about your decision?" "You can start tomorrow," he said impulsively. The smile that lit up Julia's face made something strange happen in Daniel's chest. 2 years ago, he had buried his feelings along with Isabella, convinced that he would never be able to feel anything for another woman. But there was something in Julia's purity, in the way she cared for Sophia, in the light that radiated even in the midst of her own difficulties, that disturbed him in a completely unexpected way. As he watched her say goodbye to Sophia with a warm hug, Daniel realized he had made a terrible mistake. Julia Carter wasn't just a nanny. She represented everything he had lost: hope, simplicity, genuine love. And that terrified him more than any failed business deal or corporate crisis ever had. That morning, unable to sleep, Daniel made a decision that would change everything. The next day, he needed to keep his distance from Julia. For Sophia, for himself, and especially for her, who didn't deserve to get involved with a destroyed man like he had become. But fate, as always, had other plans. Julia's first days at the mansion established a routine that Daniel tried desperately to avoid. He left early for the office and returned late, minimizing any contact beyond polite greetings. But Sophia had other plans. "Daddy, you have to see how Julia taught me how to make a kite," exclaimed the girl during Friday breakfast, pulling Daniel by the hand towards the garden. Reluctantly, he followed her until he found Julia on the lawn, holding a colorful kite made of plastic bags and bamboo sticks. Her brown hair danced in the wind, and she laughed with Sophia in such a natural way that Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," said Julia, slightly blushing. "I hope you don't mind. I only used recyclable materials." "Of course not." He observed the simple but perfectly functional kite. "Where did you learn to do this?" "My dad taught me when I was little." For a moment, a shadow passed through Julia's eyes. He said the prettiest kites weren't always the ones that flew the highest. Sophia released the kite, which rose gracefully in the blue sky. "Daddy, can you play with us?" Daniel looked at Julia, who quickly looked away. In recent days, he had noticed how she became tense in his presence, always maintaining a respectful distance. "I have a video conference." "Please, Daddy, just for a little bit." The disappointment on Sophia's face was like a punch to the stomach. Daniel heard himself saying, "All right, Princess, Just a few minutes." Julia handed him the kite string, their hands touching briefly in the process. The electricity that passed between them was undeniable, causing her to step back. "Just keep the tension steady," she murmured, avoiding eye contact. As they played, Daniel observed Julia discreetly. She wore the same type of simple clothes every day, always impeccably clean, but clearly worn from use. When Sophia asked for a snack, she offered homemade cookies that she had brought from home instead of ordering something from the mansion's kitchen. "Julia, can I ask you something?" Sophia nibbled on a cookie. "Why don't you live in a big house like ours?" Daniel saw Julia hesitate, choosing her words carefully. "Because there are different kinds of wealth, Sophia. My family may not have a lot of money, but we have a lot of love, like me and Daddy. Exactly like you and your daddy." Later that day, Daniel needed to pick up some documents at home during business hours. As he entered quietly, he heard voices coming from the living room. Julia was on the phone, speaking in a low voice, but the despair in her tone was unmistakable. "Mom, I know. The doctor said she needs more tests, but the insurance doesn't cover it." There was a pause. "No, you can't sell Grandma's ring. I'll figure something out." Daniel hid behind the wall, knowing he should walk away but unable to move. "Listen, I got a good job. They're going to pay me well. I promise I'll get the money for the treatment." Julia cleared her throat, clearly trying not to cry. "Tell her that a daughter isn't a burden. She's a blessing. I won't let anything happen to you." When she hung up, Daniel heard a muffled sob. He should have retreated, but something in his chest made him stay there, feeling like an intruder in her pain. "Mr. Sterling!" Julia's voice startled him. She had appeared in the hallway, her eyes still red. "Sorry, I didn't know you had arrived." "Julia, is everything all right?" "Of course, sir. Sophia is doing her homework in her room." She tried to pass him, but Daniel gently blocked her path. "If you need anything, an advance on your salary, maybe." Julia's eyes filled with tears again. "You've already done too much by giving me this opportunity. I can't accept anything else. It's not charity, it's recognition for what you're doing for Sophia." "And what exactly am I doing?" She raised her chin, a flash of wounded pride in her eyes. "Playing with her? Making simple snacks? Anyone could do that. You're giving her back her childhood." The words came out more intense than Daniel intended. "You're making my daughter smile again." They stood in the hallway, too close, the air charged with a tension that neither of them knew how to handle. Julia looked at him as if she was seeing something that scared her and attracted her at the same time. "Mr. Sterling, she began, but was interrupted by Sophia's shrill voice. "Daddy! Julia!" "Come see." They rushed to the girl's room, where she was standing on the bed trying to reach something on top of the closet. "Sophia, get down from there now!" shouted Daniel, running to catch her. But it was Julia who got there first, catching Sophia as she fell. The impact threw them both to the floor, with Julia instinctively protecting the girl with her own body. "Ow!" Julia groaned, holding her shoulder. "Julia, are you hurt?" Daniel knelt beside them, his hands running over her arm with an urgency that surprised everyone. "I'm fine," she murmured, but when she tried to move her shoulder, she winced in pain. Daniel helped her up, their faces getting dangerously close in the process. For a moment, the world stopped. He could feel her breath against his face, see the small freckles on her nose, the pure sincerity in her brown eyes. "Daddy, is Julia hurt because of me?" Sophia started to cry. The moment shattered. Julia immediately knelt next to the girl, ignoring her own pain. "It wasn't your fault, honey. I'm just clumsy." But Daniel had seen it. In the split second before Sophia fell, Julia hadn't hesitated. She had put herself at risk without thinking twice to protect his daughter. It was exactly what Isabella would have done. That night, after Julia went home, Daniel stayed in Sophia's room while she slept. His daughter murmured in her sleep, "Thank you, Mommy Julia." Daniel's heart stopped. Sophia had called Julia Mommy, and for the first time in 2 years, instead of feeling betrayed by Isabella's memory, Daniel felt hopeful. The following Monday, Daniel was in a meeting with Japanese investors when Helena burst into the office, pale and breathless. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry for the interruption, but you need to come home immediately. It's Sophia." Daniel's heart stopped. What happened? She got sick at school, high fever, vomiting. The nurse said it could be a virus, but Daniel was already grabbing his car keys before Helena finished the sentence. Throughout the journey, dark thoughts tormented him. Isabella had died from an infection that started with similar symptoms. Arriving at the mansion, he found Julia in Sophia's room, applying a cool compress to the girl's forehead. She had taken off her shoes and was sitting on the edge of the bed, humming a lullaby softly. "How is she?" asked Daniel, approaching quickly. "The fever has come down a little," Julia replied without taking her eyes off Sophia. "She vomited twice, but she managed to drink some tea. The pediatrician is on his way." "Daddy?" Sophia opened her little eyes, still feverish. "Am I sick?" "You're going to get better, princess." Daniel kissed his daughter's forehead, trying to hide his own panic. "Julia is taking care of you." "She's not going to leave?" "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart." Julia stroked Sophia's hair. "I'm going to stay here until you get better." When the pediatrician arrived and confirmed that it was just a virus, Daniel felt his legs go weak with relief. But Sophia remained feverish and restless throughout the night. At 2 a.m, Daniel went downstairs to get a glass of water and found Julia still in his daughter's room, asleep in the chair next to the bed, her hand on Sophia's forehead. Something broke inside his chest. Julia had stayed there, taking care of his daughter as if she were her own mother, without anyone asking. No extra salary, no obligation beyond what her heart had created. "Julia," he whispered, gently touching her shoulder. She woke up instantly, alert. "Is Sophia okay?" "She's sleeping peacefully. You need to rest." "I'm fine here," she murmured, but her eyes were heavy with fatigue. "Julia, it's 2 a.m. You need to go home. What if she wakes up with a fever again? What if she needs me?" The pure dedication in her voice made Daniel sit on the edge of the bed. "Why are you doing this?" Julia hesitated, looking at the sleeping Sophia. "When I was her age, I also got very sick. My mom spent 3 sleepless nights by my side. I remember waking up and seeing her there, always there, like a guardian angel." "And your father?" Julia's face closed off slightly. "My father, he couldn't handle sickness or weakness." She paused. "He left us when I was 8 years old. Said he couldn't support a family of weak women." Daniel felt a pang in his stomach. "Julia, that's why I know what it's like to grow up feeling like you're not enough, that you don't deserve to be taken care of." She looked at Sophia with infinite tenderness. "I never want her to feel that way." At 4 a.m, Sophia woke up crying, calling for her mother. Julia instinctively picked her up, rocking her with gentle movements. "Shh, honey, it's okay. I'm here. I want my mommy." Sophia sobbed against Julia's chest. "Your mommy is watching over you from heaven, remember? And I'm down here, taking care of you too." Daniel watched, paralyzed, as Julia managed to calm Sophia in a way that he himself hadn't been able to since Isabella's death. There was something in her voice, in the way she held his daughter, that was both maternal and comforting. "Julia," Sophia murmured, half asleep, "can you be my second mommy?" The silence that followed was deafening. Julia looked at Daniel over Sophia's head, her eyes filled with tears. Sophia, do you like Julia, Daddy?" asked Sophia innocently. Daniel felt the world stop. There, in the middle of the night, with his sick daughter in Julia's arms, the truth hit him with a devastating force. He didn't just like Julia, he was completely, hopelessly in love with her, in love with the way she cared for Sophia without expecting anything in return, with the courage with which she faced her own difficulties, with the light she brought back to a house that had become a mausoleum of memories. "I like Julia a lot," he managed to answer, his voice huskier than he intended. Julia stared at him, and at that moment, something passed between them, a recognition, a silent confession that changed everything. When Sophia finally fell asleep again, Daniel offered to carry her to bed. Their arms brushed against Julia's in the process, and she didn't pull away. They stood there, very close, watching the girl sleep. "Daniel," she whispered, and it was the first time she had said his name. Not Mr. Sterling, just Daniel. "This is dangerous. I know. I work for you. I'm just the nanny." "You've never just been the nanny." He turned to face her. "And you know it." Julia closed her eyes as if she were fighting against herself. "I can't lose this job. My mother needs me." "You won't lose it." "And Sophia? What happens to her if this goes wrong?" It was the question that Daniel feared, but that needed to be faced. Because that morning, taking care of his sick daughter together, they had crossed an invisible line, and there was no turning back. When the sun rose, Sophia was fever-free and sleeping peacefully. Daniel insisted that Julia rest in the guest room instead of going home. While she finally slept, he stood in the hallway, watching her through the half-open door. His life had become complicated in an irreversible way. Because now it wasn't just his own happiness that was at stake. It was Sophia's heart, which had already lost one mother. It was Julia's stability, which depended on that job, and Daniel knew that despite all the risks, he could no longer pretend that Julia Carter was just an employee. She had become much more than that. She had become essential. In the 2 weeks following the night they took care of Sophia together, the tension in the Sterling mansion became palpable. Daniel found excuses to work from home. Showing up in the kitchen during Sophia's snacks, appearing in the garden during playtime. Their eyes met constantly, filled with a dangerous intimacy that they both pretended to ignore. Julia tried to maintain professional composure, but her heart raced every time Daniel approached. He'd started asking about her mother, about her studies, bringing books that Sophia had asked for, but that were clearly chosen for her. Small kindnesses that crossed all the lines of what was appropriate between employer and employee. "Julia, can I talk to you?" Daniel found her in the garden on a Thursday afternoon, after Sophia had left for a children's party with Helena. They walked in silence to the gazebo at the back of the property, away from the security cameras. The proximity of their bodies, the way he said her name, everything seemed loaded with meaning. "About what happened the night Sophia got sick," he began. "Nothing happened," Julia interrupted quickly, but her cheeks flushed. "Julia, please, we can't keep pretending." "Pretending what?" She turned to face him, her eyes shining with a mixture of desire and fear. "That there's something between us? That every night I go home thinking about you? That I wake up at dawn imagining what it would be like if—" Daniel stepped closer, his hands finding her face. "If what? If we were different people, if I didn't depend on this job, if you weren't you, but we are who we are," he murmured, his face inches from hers. "And what I feel for you is real." When their lips finally met, it was as if the world caught fire. Julia melted against him, 2 years of loneliness and pain dissolving in that kiss. Daniel's hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, as if he could merge their bodies into one. When they separated, both were breathless. "This can't happen again," Julia whispered, but didn't move away from his arms. "I can't promise that." "Daniel, She was interrupted by the sound of slow clapping. They turned to find an elegant woman of approximately 60 years, grey hair perfectly coiffed, wearing a beige linen suit that screamed, "Old money." Mrs. Sterling watched them with an expression of glacial disdain. "What a touching scene," she said, her voice cutting like a blade. "My son, president of one of the largest corporations in the country, debasing himself with the help. Changed empregada to help, which is a common term for household staff." "Mom," Daniel stepped forward, protecting Julia instinctively. "It's none of your business. It's none of my business." Carmen laughed coldly. "When will my grandchild be exposed to ridicule because of your affairs? When will our family reputation be dragged through the mud?" Julia recoiled as if she had been slapped. "Mrs. Sterling, I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything. Just pack your things and leave my property." "This is my house, Mom," Daniel said firmly. And Julia works for me, not you. Mrs. Sterling approached Julia, who instinctively lowered her eyes. Honey, I'll speak in a language you understand. How much? Excuse me. Julia raised her head, confused. How much money do you want to disappear from my sons' and granddaughters' lives? The silence was absolute. Julia looked at Daniel, who was pale with anger, then back at Mrs. Sterling. Do you think I'm here for money? Aren't they all? Carmem opened her purse and pulled out a checkbook. $50,000. It's more than you'd earn in 2 years. Julia felt as if she had been slapped. There was the confirmation of all her fears, of everything she knew the world would think about her. An opportunist, a gold digger. Mom, stop this now. Daniel stepped forward, but Julia raised her hand to stop him. 100,000, continued Carmem, filling out the check, for you to disappear and never come back. Think about your sick mother, about the treatment she needs. Julia shuddered. How did that woman know about her mother? Oh, you think I don't know? Carmem smiled coldly. I know everything about you, Julia Carter. Your father who abandoned you, your mother hospitalized with cancer, the medical debts that are piling up. I know you're desperate. Enough, Daniel exploded. How dare you? I dare because someone needs to protect this family, Carmem retorted. You think this girl loves you? She loves your bank account, Daniel, just like all the others. Julia felt the tears burning her eyes. Every word was a stab at her soul, especially because they carried a grain of truth that terrified her. She really needed that money. Her mother really was dying. I'm not like the others, she said, her voice trembling. Prove it, challenged Carmem, holding out the check. Refuse this money. Stay here knowing you could have saved your mother. The check fluttered in the afternoon breeze. $100,000. Enough for her mother's treatment, for her studies, for a decent life. Everything she had ever dreamed of was there, in the hand of that cruel woman. Julia, don't listen to her, Daniel pleaded. But there was something in his voice that sounded doubtful. She stared at him. Did he also think she was an opportunist? Did he, deep down in his privileged mind, believe that a poor girl from the outskirts could only be there for self-interest? You know what? Julia straightened her shoulders, wiping away her tears. You're right about one thing. I need the money. My mother is dying, and I would do anything to save her. Daniel paled even more. But not this, Julia continued, looking directly at Carmem. Never this, because unlike what you think, there are things more important than money, like dignity, like true love. She turned to Daniel, and what he saw in her eyes destroyed him. Pain, disillusionment, and a goodbye. I'm leaving, she said simply. Not because your mother told me to, but because now I know this could never work. Our worlds are too different. Julia, wait. I'll take care of Sophia until you find a replacement, but after that... She paused, her voice breaking. After that, it'll be better if we forget this ever happened. As she walked back to the mansion, Julia heard Carmem say to Daniel, It was better this way, son. Now you can get back to reality. But what she didn't know was that Carmem Sterling wasn't finished with her. While Julia packed her things in the maid's room, the matriarch made calls to gossip columnists, to magazine photographers, to contacts in high society. The story of Daniel Sterling and the poor nanny would be the scandal of the week. And when the dust settled, Julia Carter would be publicly destroyed, ensuring that she could never approach his family again. What Carmem didn't imagine was that her revenge would have consequences far beyond what she could control. The next morning, Julia's phone rang at 6 in the morning. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, her voice agitated. Julia, honey, have you seen the paper today? Changed Dona Rosa to Mrs. Rodriguez, a common honorific. With her heart racing, Julia ran to the corner newsstand. On the front page of the gossip section of the city's biggest tabloid, a grainy but unmistakable photo, her and Daniel kissing in the gazebo, with the headline, Tycoon Daniel Sterling in forbidden romance with poor Nanny. Her hands trembled as she read, Sources close to the family confirm that billionaire widower Daniel Sterling, 38, is having a scandalous affair with Julia Carter, 24, his daughter Sophia's nanny. The young woman, who comes from the wrong side of the tracks, allegedly seduced the businessman with the aim of social climbing, changed Periferia de São Paulo to wrong side of the tracks, a common idiom for a poor area. The text continued, crudely dissecting her personal life, her humble origins, her mother's illness, even an old photo of her in the uniform of the public school she attended, all presented in a way that portrayed her as a calculating opportunist. The phone rang again. It was Helena, the housekeeper. "Julia, dear, don't come to work today. Mr. Sterling asked me to tell you that it would be better if you stayed home for now." The call ended abruptly. Julia felt the world collapse. Daniel hadn't even spoken to her personally. He had sent the housekeeper to dismiss her as if she were nothing. At the Sterling mansion, chaos had set in. Daniel had been in his office for hours, trying to control the damage. His cell phone wouldn't stop ringing. Worried investors, journalists wanting statements, board members demanding explanations. "Daniel," his mother entered the office without knocking, "you need to make a decision now. The board is meeting in an hour." "What board?" he asked, exhausted. "The company board. They're questioning your leadership ability. A love scandal with an employee isn't exactly the image shareholders expect." Daniel looked at the woman who had raised him and felt a mixture of anger and sadness. "You did this on purpose. I did what was necessary to protect our family. By destroying an innocent person." "Innocent?" Carmem laughed bitterly. "Daniel, that girl had every reason in the world to take advantage of you. Sick mother, poor family needing money, and that automatically makes her bad? It makes her human, and humans do desperate things when they need to." Before Daniel could answer, Helena appeared at the door, holding Sophia by the hand. The girl had cried so much that her eyes were swollen. "Daddy, why didn't Julia come today? Why is everyone talking about her on TV?" Daniel's heart broke. Sophia had heard everything in the kitchen, where the staff were whispering about the scandal. Princess Julia. She had to take care of some problems. "Is she coming back?" Daniel looked at his mother, who shook her head almost imperceptibly. If he wanted to save his company, his reputation, he needed to distance himself from Julia publicly. "I don't know, honey." Sophia started to cry again. "I want Julia. I want my second mommy." Carmem knelt down to her granddaughter's level. "Sophia, Julia was just a nanny. We'll find another one." "I don't want another one," Sophia screamed, running to her room and slamming the door. That afternoon, Julia was at home when she received the most unexpected visit. 3 elegant women, clearly from high society, appeared at her door. "Are you Julia Carter?" asked the leader of the group, a voluptuous blonde of approximately 40 years. "Yes. I'm Patricia Miller, wife of Congressman Miller. These are Vivian and Marcia. We've come to make you a proposal." Changed Mendez to Miller to sound more American. Julia let them in, confused. They looked around the simple apartment with poorly disguised disdain. "Honey," Patricia sat delicately on the worn sofa, "we know about your situation with Daniel Sterling." "There is no situation," Julia replied dryly. "Of course there is. And we want to help you resolve it in the best way possible." Vivian opened a folder. "We have a document here, a statement where you claim that you purposefully seduced Mr. Sterling with financial intentions, that you deeply regret it, and that you will never approach the family again." Julia felt nauseous. "And why would I do that?" "Because," Marcia smiled coldly, "in return, you will receive $200,000, enough for your mother's treatment and much more. And if I refuse, then we'll ensure that you never get a job in Los Angeles again," Patricia said simply. "We know people in every school, daycare, family in the city. Your reputation will be ruined forever." Julia looked at the document. There was her way out. Enough money to save her mother, but at the price of completely destroying any chance of happiness with Daniel. Does he know about this proposal? The three women exchanged glances. Mr. Sterling is concerned about his professional reputation at the moment. Let's just say he wouldn't oppose a solution that benefited everyone. The words were like knives in Julia's heart. Daniel wouldn't fight for her. He wouldn't defend her. In the end, she really was just the poor nanny who had gotten involved where she shouldn't have. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow at noon. Patricia stood up. After that, the offer expires and, well, the consequences will be your responsibility. After they left, Julia collapsed on the sofa and cried like she hadn't cried since she was a child. Her phone rang incessantly. Journalists, curious people, even anonymous threats. She had to turn it off. At night, her mother called from the hospital, her voice weak but worried. Honey, I saw it on TV. Is it true that you're dating that rich man? Mom, Julia, Connie interrupted. I didn't raise you to be the mistress of a married man or a rich widower. You're better than that. He's not married, Mom, and I fell in love. Love doesn't pay the bills, honey. Love doesn't cure cancer. Her mother's words echoed in Julia's head all night. In the morning, she had made her decision. She called Patricia Miller. I accept the proposal, but I want the money before I sign anything. At the Sterling mansion, Daniel was preparing for a press conference when Helena knocked on the door. Sir, Miss Julia is here. She says she needs to talk to you urgently. Daniel ran downstairs, finding Julia in the entrance hall. She was pale but determined, holding a folder. Julia, thank you for coming. We need to talk about... I came to deliver my resignation letter, she interrupted, holding out the document. And to publicly apologize for the embarrassment I caused your family. Daniel was paralyzed. What are you saying? That you were right to keep your distance. Our worlds really are too different. Her voice was cold, rehearsed. I took advantage of the situation, of your kindness to Sophia. It was a mistake that won't be repeated. Julia, that's not true, and you know it. It is true, yes. She avoided his gaze. Accept that it was better this way, Daniel. You need someone worthy of you. I need to take care of my family. And Sophia, you're going to abandon her like this. For the first time, Julia's eyes filled with tears. Tell her that I will always love her, but that sometimes people need to say goodbye. Julia, don't do this to us. She turned to leave, but he grabbed her arm. Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't love me. Julia stared at him, and Daniel saw all the pain in the world reflected in those brown eyes that had bewitched him. I don't love you, Daniel Sterling. I never did. The lie came out of her lips like poison, but she forced herself to maintain it. Because she knew that if she hesitated, if she showed weakness, she wouldn't have the courage to protect him from the scandal that her presence caused. Daniel released her as if he had been burned. I understand. Julia left the mansion without looking back, knowing that she was leaving there not only a job, but the only real chance of happiness she had had in her life. In the car that awaited her, Patricia Miller smiled, satisfied. Very convincing, dear. The money will be transferred today. As the car drove away, Daniel stood at the door, watching the woman who had returned life to his dead heart disappear. And for the second time in his life, Daniel Sterling was sure that he had lost forever the person he loved most in the world. 3 weeks had passed since Julia left the Sterling mansion. The money was in her account, $200,000 that allowed her to pay for the best treatment for her mother and pay off all the family's debts. But every penny felt like it was burning in her hands. Connie had responded well to the treatment, but immediately noticed the deep sadness that consumed her daughter. Julia, you did the right thing, she said one afternoon while they were having tea on the small balcony of the apartment. But why does it look like you're dying inside? Because maybe I am, Mom. Julia had tried to resume her routine, looking for work in other houses. But Patricia Miller's words proved prophetic. All the doors closed before she even had a chance to explain herself. Her reputation had made her untouchable in the city. It was then that Mrs. Rodriguez, her neighbor, brought information that would change everything. "Julia, honey, do you know Helena, the housekeeper from the house where you worked?" "I know her." "Why?" "She's downstairs saying she needs to talk to you urgently." Julia went downstairs suspiciously. Helena was clearly nervous, looking around as if she feared being followed. "Julia, forgive me for showing up like this, but I need to tell you something. I can't stay silent anymore." "What happened?" "That day, when you came to say goodbye to Mr. Daniel, I overheard a conversation I shouldn't have." Helena recounted how she had witnessed Patricia Miller and her friends celebrating in the mansion parking lot. "They laughed, Julia. They laughed at how easy it was to trick you. One of them said that Mr. Daniel didn't even know about the proposal they made to you." Julia felt her blood run cold. "What are you saying?" "That they lied. Mr. Daniel didn't send anyone to make that proposal. On the contrary," Helena hesitated. "He's destroyed Julia. He doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep right. And Sophia, the girl, doesn't stop crying, asking when you're coming back. But he himself said it was better if I didn't come back." "Said that when? He never told me to fire you. It was Mrs. Sterling who told me to call you that day." The truth fell on Julia like lightning. She had been manipulated, deceived by people who wanted Daniel away from her at any cost, and in an attempt to protect him, she had destroyed them both. "Helena, I need to see Daniel. I need to explain. It won't be easy. He's more closed off than ever. And Mrs. Sterling." Helena shook her head. She got what she wanted. Mr. Daniel will announce his engagement to Letitia Van Camp at the end of the month. Changed Vasconcelos to Van Camp, a more Americanized version. Julia felt the world spin. Letitia Van Camp, daughter of one of the most traditional families in Los Angeles, rich, educated, everything she would never be. "It was all rigged," Helena continued. "Mrs. Sterling and Letitia's mother have been friends for decades. They've been planning this all along." That night, Julia barely managed to sleep. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like a victim, but like a fighter. She had been deceived, manipulated, but there was still time to fix things. She began to plan. First, she sought out Mark, a colleague from her education degree who worked as a freelance journalist. "Mark, I need your help. And I know you need a story that's going to explode." She told him everything: the manipulation, the lies, the schemes set up by the Los Angeles elite to separate a couple who had fallen in love for real. "Julia, do you have proof?" "I'll get it." Her second stop was at the clinic where her mother was being treated. There, by chance, she discovered that Patricia Miller's mother was also a patient. "Mrs. Matthews?" Julia approached the elderly woman in the waiting room. "I'm Julia Carter. I met your daughter Patricia recently." Changed Mercedes to Matthews. "Ah, of course. Patricia mentioned you. She said you were very smart to accept her proposal." "Proposal? To stay away from that rich businessman. She said that you women need to help each other in these situations, that sometimes you have to sacrifice your heart to protect appearances." Mrs. Matthews continued talking without realizing that she was handing over the entire conspiracy. Julia recorded everything discreetly on her cell phone. Her third move was the riskiest. She sought out Robert, the Sterling family driver for more than 10 years, who had recently been dismissed for cost-cutting. In fact, for having shown sympathy for Julia. "Miss Julia!" Robert was surprised to see her. "How are you?" "I need your help, Robert. Do you know where the Sterling Company office is?" "Of course. Why?" "Because tomorrow there's going to be a board meeting, and I'm going to be there." Robert hesitated. "Miss Julia, that could cause a lot of trouble." "Robert," she interrupted him, "did you see how happy Sophia was when I took care of her?" "I did." The girl was smiling again. "And did you see how Daniel, Mr. Sterling, was different?" Robert smiled sadly. I saw him in love for the first time since his first wife died. Then help me fight for that family, because if I don't do anything, we're all going to lose. The next morning, Julia got dressed carefully. She wore her best dress, a simple but elegant navy blue dress that she had bought for her teaching degree graduation. She tied her hair up, put on a discreet lipstick. She was no longer running away. She was no longer hiding. She was going to war. Meanwhile, at the Sterling mansion, Daniel was finishing dressing for what would be the worst day of his life. In 2 hours, he would announce his engagement to Letitia Van Camp in a ceremony that his mother had organized to clean up his public image. Sophia knocked on the bedroom door, still in her pajamas. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Princess." "Are you going to marry the blonde lady?" Daniel knelt down in front of his daughter. "Maybe, honey, but you don't love her." It wasn't a question. "Sophia, you love Julia. I saw it in your eyes." Daniel felt his chest tighten. Sometimes love isn't enough. Mommy always said that love was the only thing that mattered. The mention of Isabella made Daniel close his eyes. "Your mother was very wise. Then why aren't you fighting for Julia?" The question from a 6-year-old carried more wisdom than all the business strategies that Daniel knew, because it was easier to give up than to risk suffering again. But when he looked at Sophia, he saw in her eyes the same determination that Isabella had had. And for the first time in weeks, Daniel Sterling felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late yet. Maybe there was still a chance to fight for what really mattered. But in a few hours, he would discover that Julia Carter had reached the same conclusion, and that the war for the truth was just beginning. The grand ballroom of the Beverly Hills Hotel was filled with the Los Angeles elite. Journalists, discreetly positioned, influential businessmen, the cream of society gathered to witness what promised to be the social event of the year, the announcement of the engagement between Daniel Sterling and Letitia Van Camp. Changed Copacabana Palace to Beverly Hills Hotel, an iconic location in Los Angeles. Daniel was on the makeshift stage, impeccable in his tuxedo, but with the countenance of a man going to his own execution. Beside him, Letitia smiled radiantly, displaying the diamond ring that he had placed on her finger an hour before, a mechanical gesture devoid of any emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mrs. Sterling approached the microphone, "it is with immense joy that I announce the engagement between my son Daniel and the lovely Letitia Van Camp, uniting two of the most traditional Los Angeles families." Applause echoed through the hall, but Daniel barely heard it. His thoughts were with Sophia, who had refused to come to the ceremony, crying in her room and asking why he couldn't marry Julia. It was then that a murmur spread through the crowd. Someone had entered without an invitation. Julia Carter walked determinedly down the central aisle, wearing her simple navy blue dress, her hair loose falling over her shoulders. Murmurs of indignation spread among the guests, but she kept her eyes fixed on Daniel. "Security!" Mrs. Sterling shouted, but Julia had already reached the stage. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, her clear voice echoing through the sound system, "but I need to say a few truths before this man makes the biggest mistake of his life." Daniel was paralyzed as he watched her. She was thinner. There were shadows under her eyes, but she radiated a strength he had never seen before. "Miss, you have no right to be here," Letitia said. But Julia completely ignored her. "Daniel." She turned to him, and when their eyes met, the entire ballroom seemed to disappear. "I need you to know that everything I said that day was a lie." "Julia, don't," he began, but she raised her hand. "Let me finish, because if I don't say this now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." She turned to the audience, where television cameras had already begun to film. "My name is Julia Carter. I'm a teacher, I come from a humble family, and for a few weeks I had the privilege of taking care of this man's daughter." Her voice gained strength. "During that time, I fell in love with him, and he with me." Gasps of outrage echoed through the crowd, but Julia continued. But some people in this room couldn't allow that to happen. After all, how could a poor girl from the wrong side of the tracks dare to love a rich man? She took her cell phone out of her pocket. That's why they hatched a plan. They blackmailed me, lied to me, made me believe that Daniel knew and agreed with everything. Julia activated the recording of the conversation with Mrs. Matthews. The elderly woman's voice echoed through the hall, naively confessing the entire scheme. Patricia Miller paled in the audience, trying to hide. They offered me $200,000 to disappear from his life, Julia continued. And you know what was most cruel? That I accepted, not out of greed, but because I believed I was protecting the man I love. She turned again to Daniel, tears streaming down her face. But I found out that you never knew anything, that you didn't send me away, that maybe you've suffered as much as I have in these weeks. Daniel took a step forward, his voice hoarse with emotion. Julia, I love you, she said simply. I love your kindness, your dedication to Sophia, the way you fight for everything you believe in. And I know you love me too, because I saw it in your eyes. I felt it in your arms. Carmem tried to intervene. This charade is ridiculous. Daniel, you can't listen to... Enough! Daniel exploded, surprising everyone. Enough with the manipulations, Mom. Enough with the lies. He took the microphone from Carmem's hands and turned to the audience. Julia is right. I love her. I love her courage, her purity, the way she transformed my daughter from a sad child into a happy girl again. His voice strengthened. And if that bothers some of you, I'm very sorry. He approached Julia, completely ignoring Letitia, who was gaping. You said you love me. I did, she whispered, even knowing that it means giving up the simple life you know, that it means facing judgment, gossip, people who will always question your motives. I'd rather face all of that by your side than have peace away from you. Daniel held her face in his hands. Then marry me, not because it's convenient, not because it's expected, but because I can't live without you anymore. The silence in the hall was absolute. Then, slowly, the applause began. Not from the indignant elite, but from the waiters, the photographers, the hotel staff. Simple people like Julia, who recognized true love when they saw it. What about Sophia? Julia asked, smiling through her tears. Sophia is at home, waiting for me to be brave enough to bring back her second mommy. When they kissed, this time it wasn't a stolen kiss or one filled with guilt. It was the promise of a future built on truth, courage, and genuine love. Letitia stormed off the stage, throwing the ring on the floor. Carmem tried one last play. Daniel, think about the company, the reputation. The company will survive, Mom, and as for the reputation, he smiled. I prefer to be known as the man who had the courage to choose love. 6 months later, the church was decorated with simple flowers and plenty of natural light. Sophia, radiant in her flower girl dress, walked ahead, scattering rose petals. Behind her, Julia advanced towards the altar, not in an expensive dress, but in her mother's dress, carefully adjusted by her neighbors. Daniel waited for her with tears in his eyes, next to the priest who would marry them. In the front row, Connie, already recovered and strong, smiled proudly next to Helena and Robert, who had become part of Julia's chosen family. Carmem was not present. She had moved to Europe until the scandal passed, as she had said, but her absence did not diminish the joy of that day in the slightest. I now pronounce you husband and wife, said the priest. When Daniel kissed Julia, Sophia shouted, Now I have a real second mommy. The reception was at the mansion, but transformed. The doors were open to Julia's neighbors, co-workers, children from the daycare where she had worked. The Los Angeles elite mingled with simple people, united by the celebration of the love that had overcome all obstacles. During the waltz, Julia whispered in Daniel's ear, I still can't believe this is real. It's real, he replied, turning her gently, and it's forever. What about the company? The business, they're better than ever. I discovered that when you're truly happy, everything else falls into place. Sophia ran to them in the middle of the dance, demanding to be lifted up. Daniel picked her up, and the three hugged in the center of the dance floor. "Daddy," Sophia whispered, "is Mommy Isabella happy up in heaven?" Daniel looked at Julia, who smiled encouragingly. "I'm sure she is, Princess. She wanted us to be happy." "And now are we a real family?" "Now we're a real family," confirmed Julia, kissing the girl's forehead. That night, after the guests had left and Sophia was sleeping, Daniel and Julia sat in the garden where it had all begun. "You know what's funny?" Julia said, leaning against her husband's chest. "If your mother hadn't done all that, maybe we would never have discovered the strength of our love." True. Sometimes obstacles serve to show us what is worth fighting for. And for Sophia too, she was our Cupid from day one. She really was, a wise little girl who knew exactly what her father needed. Julia turned in his arms. "I love you, Daniel Sterling. I love you more, Julia Sterling." And there, under the stars, surrounded by the perfume of the flowers that had witnessed both their separation and their reunion, they knew with absolute certainty that some loves are stronger than social differences, more powerful than prejudices, more lasting than any storm. Their love hadn't been easy, but it had been true, and that made all the difference. 2 years later, when Sophia gained a baby brother, she insisted that he be named Gabriel, because angels brought Julia into our family. And so, in the mansion that had been a mausoleum of sadness, echoed again laughter, the cries of a baby, and above all, the most beautiful music of all, that of true love that conquered.